Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, the recent spate of shootings in communities has reignited conversations about gun violence. Experts say on average, a person is shot dead almost every hour in South Africa. While gun violence is not a new problem, there are always questions about what needs to happen to curb it. Last week, the ANC emerged from its lekgotla with strengthening the fight against crime and corruption as one of its priorities. Let's discuss this with Gabriel Crouse. He's the head of campaigns at the Institute for Race Relations. Gabriel, good morning and thank you very much for your time. We actually just wrapped up an interview with Gun Free South Africa on the proliferation of guns being a serious concern. Just your views on the scale at which we're seeing it now. Just last week, a learner was shot at a school. The concern or the question being that how did a teacher think to come with a gun to school?
Yeah, it's extremely worrying. In the last couple of weeks, there have also been mass shootings. And we all remember towards the end of last year, a series of basically, well, there was mass deaths at one tavern, not to do with guns, but another couple of mass shootings at taverns. So South Africa is seeing these, I think, intense tragedies that really catch the public eye. But most murders never get onto the news. There are, according to the latest data, 7,000 murders in the last quarter. That's coming to about 28,000 per annum. That puts us at one of the highest murder rates in the world. It means the murder rate is continuing to increase as it has been doing for a lot of the last decade. And really, there are war zones where fewer people are being killed by others than is taking place in South Africa. So I think one thing that we can all agree about is that we're in a state of major crisis when it comes to safety in this country.
So what needs to be done? Because we do know that even the African National Congress has decided that crime prevention in the country needs to be a serious focus for them. But what exactly needs to be done to ensure at the very least that we rid ourselves of guns in our communities?
So I think that I do have quite a starkly different view both to some of the ANC and to Gun Free South Africa. I personally grew up in a household with no guns and I was terrified of them, and I maintained that kind of very worried attitude. But when I look at the numbers, for example, coming from Gun Free South Africa, on their estimates, the number of guns in circulation in South Africa, registered and unregistered, decreased by 600,000 between the late 2000s and 2014. So there were less guns. And that's because of the Fire Controls Act that was implemented, operationalized from 2004. So the government said, hand in your guns, impound them. We're going to tighten up the rules here. There's going to be licensing renewal requirements that a lot of people can't meet. So a lot of people gave their guns back, a lot fewer guns in the country. But the murder rate started going up after that. Now, I don't want to say that the murder rate went up because there were less guns. I think that's confusing causation with correlation. But I think it's also possible to confuse causation with correlation the other way. If you make ordinary peacekeeping, law-abiding, decent, dignified South Africans give away their guns, which is exactly what Becky Cele called for last year. The ANC tried to pass a law that said no one is allowed to have a gun for self-defense. They try to take away that provision within the fire controls.
Which has created a big debate in society because of the instances where I know a former colleague of mine, Barry Bateman, had broken a story at Norwood that the guns that were kept there were actually stolen. There were some police officers that were part of that. They gave them away or sold them to criminals. Those guns landed up killing ordinary citizens. So there is that big debate around what should happen or what should come first. Do we need to create an environment that allows for citizens to hand over their guns, or the citizens must start first and hand over and hope that when police retrieve the other guns on criminal side, they'll be kept safe for good or destroyed?
Yes, instead of being sold back, as you said. I mean, I was on eNCA. I spoke with the Deputy Police Commissioner, and I asked her, what's going on with Operation Impi? This large-scale investigation into the police selling guns, confiscating guns, which is what they're trying to confiscate millions now, but even just confiscating tens of thousands from criminals, which is good, and then selling them back to gangsters in the Western Cape, connected with thousands of murders, including hundreds of children that were murdered by guns confiscated by the police. How can that same police force not complete the investigation but at the same time try to take more guns into control when it clearly doesn't have control of those guns. And the answer that she gave me was that, the investigations are going forward and lots of progress is being made. That was 6 months ago. I still don't see any, the progress is seeing people in orange overalls behind bars, police that were selling guns to gangsters. So I think that you asked me what do I think we should do. I don't think we should be taking guns away from law-abiding citizens. I think what we need to be doing is fixing the police. And the simplest way to do that is to respect the wisdom of democracy itself. I think that if ordinary South Africans had the right to elect their station commander, their sheriff, we would be in a much better position than having Pretoria parachute people in from far away to try and keep communities safe and fail to do so. We've seen police calling private security because they're too afraid to go get the gangsters themselves. We've seen police run away from crimes instead of running towards them to try and keep the peace. But if you had a station commander elected from within the community would know in that area, whether it's a rural area, whether it's an urban area, township area, they're going to choose someone. It's not always going to be perfect. Their mistakes will be made. But by and large, I think people are going to choose someone that they trust, someone that is embedded in that community, someone who cares about that community, someone who wants to protect the elderly, who wants to protect the children, who wants to protect the women from violence, who wants to keep law and order. It's a basic urge in this country. Surveys by the Institute of Race Relations show that South Africa is desperately hungry. The top issue that most people identify is unemployment. And then the next bunch is crime, corruption, and a lack of responsiveness by the police. These issues are not just shown in our surveys, they're shown in IPID surveys, which show that most people don't expect the police, if they call them, to arrive in time to deal with the crime. In rural areas, 20% of people say you can phone the police and they will never come. Another 20% say they will come in 3 hours or something like that. So, we really have a major breakdown in law and order. Sometimes when the police step in, they're too harsh. 50 people died in police custody at the start of COVID, the lockdown. Petrus Michel, Sibusiso Amos, Collins Khoza, people who seem to have been killed by the police for drinking in private. The prosecutions of that have been stalled, have been bungled. Evidence has been lost. The police department lost its basic forensic capacities for months on end, halting all rape cases, basically, that required rape kits to be serviced to the courts. We really are living in a country that is tearing away at the edges and at the middle and in the in-between. And that's not even to begin to mention the July riots, the worries about this winter coming, with increased unemployment continuing to be a major problem. I think that what we need to look for is the greatest untapped resource in South Africa. And to my mind, that is the common sense of ordinary South Africans. Ordinary South Africans are afraid. Ordinary South Africans want to live in peace and safety. And I believe that ordinary South Africans, if they had the power to choose who can be in charge of their local station, rich people, I'm not particularly rich, but I finally got to the stage where I can afford to pay for private security. And I thought, which company do I want? What are their response times? What are the reviews coming from the people? I put in the effort to try and find, if I'm going to put a few $100 a month, a good solution there. Many people can't afford that, but they will audit their sheriff. They will audit their station commander. They will put in that effort. Even if they can't afford to put in the money, they'll put in their vote. And the vote is a very powerful thing. If we give ordinary South Africans the right to vote for their station commanders, I sincerely believe we will see a turnaround in the murder rate, and it would be for the betterment of us all.